We're live, Altbays Show, brought to you by Altbays.nz. This is show 175. Happy? I'm happy too. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks so much for subscribing to our YouTube channel and sharing the love. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, The Madhouse. Yes, we are there too. We are a podcast, so you can find us on all the leading audio platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Amazon Music, all of them, iHeartRadio. And our media group also publishes this beautiful thing. Look at this, the Coromandel magazine. You will find the printed copies all around the Coromandel. It's growing quite fast. People keep sending us messages. Where do I find the magazine? I know, right? Because they're free and people are taking them home, which makes us very, very happy. But you can read it online on coromandel.nz, and we do have an audio version because accessibility matters, so you can even listen to the beautiful articles while, I don't know, doing whatever, the dishes. So there you go, coromandel.nz. Have a look. On my left, Pamela Grealy. Hello.
Hey, kia ora.
Kia ora. It's
Nice
good to see
be here.
Hey, it's been a while.
Yes, since show 59 I was here.
Show 59, sometime I would say last year, maybe like July.
Yeah, June-ish, I think, yeah.
Yeah. Pamela from Workers' Council.
Yes.
Yes.
So if you've got any employment issues, let me know.
There you
I'll
go.
help you out.
It was such a good show, that one.
Thank you.
We learned a lot, and I remember that we had Tepaya with us as
Yes.
a co-host, and she had some cool questions as well. I guess it's a cool thing for young people to understand at an early age what your rights are, right? Do you get young
Absolutely.
people coming to chats every now and then?
No, but what we're looking to do at the moment is we're looking to create an education program. We're going to hope to take it into schools to let young people know what they can expect when they go to work, and also what's expected of them, because that's sometimes where that kind of disconnect of what's expected and what I expect are two different things. So it's always good to let them know what's coming up for them when they actually enter the world of work, different from having a paper round. Do
That's
people
right.
still do have paper rounds? I think they might. Yeah.
They do. They might. Yeah. Let's bring Mark to this conversation. We have Mark Milmine here with us. Hello.
How you going?
Good, man. How are you?
Great, thanks.
So, Mark, you are the owner and director of the Coromandel Lifestyle Center,
Amongst other things, yes.
amongst other things. Can you
Yeah.
tell me all the other cool
other
things that you're up to?
Oh, and my wife and I own 3 businesses on the peninsula. That's one, which incorporates BedsRus Whitianga, 100% appliances Whitianga, a really cool little gift shop called Joie de Vivre, and our furniture offering as well. But we also own 100% appliances in Thames. And also my wife runs our gift shop in Pawanui, which is called Armoire.
Armoire. What does that mean?
Armoire is French for like a really ornate wardrobe, and so it's all those precious. And traditionally you would store your precious things, so it's a store of precious things.
Cool. Oh, good start. Nice. Good start. How has it been for you to be in a seasonal space like the Coromandel with such a big shop and like having the madness with the roads and all these things happening now? Like has it disturbed considerably work, or people were still coming and buying new appliances?
It's fluid. Even before the roads and the 2 big cyclones, we had a really poor summer on the peninsula. It started in November, and the rain events just came one after the other for week after week. And so, and even the council was on their websites on Boxing Day advising campers, particularly those who are in canvas, to go home because it was just going to get worse. So summer was a bit of a bust, really. Let's put it frankly, and that's before we lost the Kopuhikawai Road, which of course used to deliver a lot of our holiday makers, whether they be short-term or batch owners, to the peninsula. And so since then it's been even more challenging. February was really tough for a lot of people, particularly in the hospitality and the tourism-related ventures. Like, I'm not playing my violin here. Like, our businesses are largely supported by our local populations, and in some ways our holiday makers give us the cream for the season. So other than potentially the Pauanui one, which does really rely on those batch owners being in town. Thanks for coming down on Easter, guys. So yeah, it's been ebbing and flowing, and a lot of folks who probably wanted to come down to their beach house through March just were a little bit nervous, I think, about getting there, or relying on social media to say, yes, the roads are open. Getting there, an event happened or a washout worsened, and all of a sudden the roads are closed and they can't get back to work. So March was really poor still for a lot of people, a lot of businesses on the peninsula. And Easter, heaps of people came. It was great.
Yes.
And by all accounts, there's quite a few families still here enjoying the school holidays as well, which is awesome.
Shout out to the visitors, Pamela?
Yeah,
they
we
are
love
around.
the visitors.
We love the visitors. I just want to say thank you very much to Bay's Pizzeria for bringing us some beautiful kai here tonight.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Was the pizza all good? Was it all right?
Pizza was amazing.
Sensational.
Delicious. Cool. So if you are coming to the Coromandel, make sure to check them out. Or if you live here, support the team, Bay's Pizzeria. They are online, bays.fit, and we're going to have them showing on our screen during the show. So make sure to check them out. Thanks, Henry. Always a pleasure, my friend. Pamela asked a cool question before we started the show about the appliances, about things that are hot, what's happening.
Right.
Yeah, the moment. So I want to know that you answered us, but not live. And I also want to ask how was that transition for you? Because you have a banking background, and then suddenly you are running this big appliances store. Like, did you have to completely shift your mindset to that? Or you had an idea of that world? So two diverse questions. Let's start with the popular products of the summer. Probably one that sold really well, great stocking filler for Christmas, was a iced coffee machine from Sunbeam, which was just a regular filter coffee into a cup-sized receptacle, and so that sold really well because iced coffee is really popular, and in the cities I'm hearing that you can pay $11 for an iced coffee, so why not make it yourself?
I think I might have a new business.
$11. And flowing on from that, I was actually at a presentation from DeLonghi the other day, and they've perfected a technique of extracting espresso coffee from bean using cold water. So and that takes about 5 minutes rather than 15 hours, which is what it takes for a cafe to give you cold filtered coffee. And so that's going to hit the market very, very shortly, and I think it'll be popular. The espresso shots, which I tried, cold espresso, were a little bit sweeter and really interesting texture, so that'll be popular as well, a new product.
There you go.
Your other question, that was out of left field a little bit, but I had no retail experience whatsoever, so that was interesting, and I did rely on the two businesses that I bought. They kept all the staff, and so that was challenging for staff when their new boss, who they're looking up to for direction, turns around and says, well, you've been here 5 years, you tell me what we should be doing, and they were quite shocked. So that was interesting in its own right, but we learned together how to run the business and try and improve the business. But yeah, it was a bit of a shock. I think my wife and I have pretty good retail instincts about how we like to be treated as a shopper and what we look for, and that goes across the whole gamut in terms of the personal service, but also how the aesthetic of the store and how we wanted things to look. We bought two existing appliance stores that were in very old buildings, very dated decor. So that was challenging our aesthetic, which is why the Coromandel lifestyle vision was born. And we knew that we wanted to do something fresh and brand new, and have a really high expectation of how it looked and felt when you're shopping there, so that we're giving as good or even better experience than some of the places that you would ordinarily shop in Auckland.
Do you have people coming to you, Pamela, in those circumstances when there was a business owner, they sell the business, and then there's a new challenge? Because it's all about people at the end of the day, right?
It is, and sometimes, especially in tough financial times, new business owners might use that as an excuse to try and shed staff. Maybe they want to bring in people that they know. So we're always very happy to have people come and talk to us about how a business can transition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of husband and wife owners go into a business and they kind of come in with premeditated ideas of he's going to do this, she's going to do that, and it doesn't always work out that way. And an interesting anecdote to that was the business that I sold to fund these two purchases, which was an import business I had in Auckland. I had an admin lady there. She handled the phones. She did all the sales. She was the life and soul of my business. I was an absentee owner almost. And when I sold the incoming couple, I'm certain that they were going to put the wife in to do her role. And I cautioned them against that because the customers love Maggie. Hi, Maggie. So much. And I said to them, if you let Maggie go, particularly in the first year, you're going to lose the investment you've just made. She's that essential and central. And 6 years later, Maggie's still there.
Oh, shout out to Maggie.
So that's great.
Okay, that's great. Did you feel that import business was a transition into the retail business? Because going from investment banking to running your own business to then having a bricks and mortar type business.
Yeah, in some ways, yes. And others, no. I always felt, whilst I was in banking for over a decade, that one day I wanted to have my own business. I didn't know what it might look like. The import business was the first one that I bought, and I was attracted to the sector because I knew it was growing, and the business I thought had quite a cool little niche, and I could see areas where the product range could be expanded, we had just moved to the Coromandel, and so I needed something that was semi-managed. I didn't have to be there every day because it was based in East Tamaki. It was going to be an hour and a 40-minute commute. I wasn't going to do that every day. So I had some parameters that I was looking for in a business. It turned out to be in fence and gate hardware, which is definitely not sexy, but it just ticked all the other boxes, and it didn't really matter at the end of the day what product it sold, so long as it was going to give me ticking those boxes and providing enough challenge for me.
Man, I wonder about like the mindset. How old were you when you started to feel like, you know what, I'm into this banking thing? Was it like money that was driving you, or like your family was involved with it? So you had a vision. What was the thing for you?
Nothing as interesting as that. I'm sorry. No.
It's good with sums.
My dad worked for many years in retail banking. He was with BNZ, and he eventually left there because they had a rotation policy where they liked to transfer people around the country, and where my parents settled us through primary school. They just loved. We were near the beach where there was so much going for where we lived that they couldn't fathom taking us on the road effectively every 2 years, moving to small rural towns around New Zealand. So he left. So that was the only banking in the family. Through university, I wanted to do a business degree. I decided to do accounting as my major, not because I liked accounting, but because I knew it was a good tool to have in my toolbox. So I did that, and then I went on my OE with my freshly minted chartered accountant certificate. But when I got to the UK, it was quite challenging for my recruiter. I enrolled in a whole bunch of agencies, as every Kiwi does when they hit London. And I said, I'm an accountant, but I do not want an accounting job. And so for about 3 weeks, the phone didn't ring. And I then it started ringing, and they'd say, hey, it's so-and-so from Morgan Banks here. I've got this great accounting role for you. And I was like, didn't you listen? I don't want it. Oh, your money must be running short now. This will be great for you. I held out and I held out. I didn't know what I wanted, but I just didn't want to do accounting because I wanted a new skill. And then one day the phone rang and they said, hey, I know you don't want accounting. How about investment banking? And I said, that's perfect. I knew about finance and corporate finance and mergers and acquisitions. I said, that is perfect. Using my accounting skills to do something different in the finance market. And I was really lucky. The bank that I joined had a major scandal back at its home base in America, which was a company called BedsRus, which is actually quite big in New Zealand at the time as well. They had lost a bit of money, and the CEO had put a ban on permanent hires across the whole globe. And so my boss was cunning, and he said, I need some bodies, I need some more slaves, but I can't hire anyone permanently, so I know I'm going to go and get some contractors who can work in the background. They won't go to meetings with clients or anything. They'll just be in the engine room doing the doings. And so me and about half a dozen Antipodeans got a role as a contractor. When the ban was lifted 2 years later, my boss called me in and said, you want to go permanent? I said, absolutely, I love this. So when I went to London, I didn't know I wanted to be in banking, but it was fortuitous, and I spent another 12 years there. And
you ended up being vice president of the bank, is that right?
Yeah, just before I left, I actually got promoted to director as well. So that it's getting pretty senior. And actually, that was one of the reasons I left. Ironically, you get promoted, then you resign. My role was moving into areas that weren't really my skill set. I really loved the day-to-day doing of mergers and acquisitions, being involved with multidisciplinary groups with lawyers, tax accountants, environmental consultants, all sorts of people that come together for a very short time to work really intensely on a corporate takeover or divestment. And really interesting work, really smart and interesting people to work with for a short time, and then hopefully you get a successful outcome, and then you disband, then you coalesce in some other group, some other sector with other really smart people, and it was quite addictive, and I loved it. But my role was moving more into client generation and less into the doing, so that was when I left.
Is it possible to have a world without banks?
Definitely,
Pamela. Yeah?
That's one of my questions that I had when I was LinkedIn stalking you earlier, Mark. I was looking, can the evil banks, these big conglomerates, can they do more good than they do? And if they can, why aren't they doing it?
I imagine that they can. They can do a lot of good. Can we do without them? I would be scared with what would replace them. We can't do without a form of currency, whether that's digital or Bitcoin or some other invention that hasn't even occurred yet. And you could foresee a world where Elon Musk is doing something and Richard Branson is doing something, and they're all issuing some form of payment terms that we can all swap with each other. But I don't know if that's necessarily a better outcome than a regulated banking sector. But sure, they do make a bit of money. Actually, a girl that I work with at KPMG is now the CEO of ANZ New Zealand. Well done, Antonia. And she's been in the paper saying, yes, the banking sector in New Zealand makes a lot of money, but if you look at the amount of assets that they have to create to generate that return, the return on their assets isn't actually that high. But yes, banks are in a privileged position. We all need them. And they do a lot of good work, but they probably could do more.
It sounds like you disagree.
I'm not sure I 100% agree. I'm sure there's something else, so, in the event of the collapse of the internet, all the digital technology goes down, we'd be back to the barter system.
Yep, shells and coffee beans. You're addicted to coffee, so.
Yeah, tulips. We'll just have another one on the tulips. But I think personally, the amount of money that the retail banks have just made is absolutely obscene. And it shouldn't be allowed, especially as most of it goes outside of New Zealand. Anyway, that's not what we came to talk about.
Get them back by becoming a shareholder and then stowing away those dividends.
So So that's another good topic, the shareholders things, because I hear that quite often. Oh, if you're not investing, you should be paying attention. You should be reading a little bit about shareholding. And then I did a little bit of research a couple of years ago, and there was something very popular, like the top 50 or 500. I don't even know how it works. Like probably the easiest way to invest. That you go for, like, you buy the share. And then I was like, oh, cool, that's what most people do. And then I went through the list of businesses, which means like that someone put those businesses together to make your life easier. So you just throw your money there. I'm like, I don't agree with any of you guys. I don't buy any of the things that you guys are putting out there, like, and then I kept thinking, why don't we have more like financial education, at an early age? Because if you go just for the money side of things, of like, if you invest here, you get some results. A lot of people understand that concept and they will do it. But like, not many people say, you are investing in these dodgy companies. Dodgy is relative, right? So I might think that something is dodgy and some other people might think that is not. But like, would the educational system in a capitalist world would be a thing to provide very specific financial education to kids and like really explain those things? Because it didn't take me long to check a list of businesses. I was like cigarettes and all this stuff. I'm like, I don't know if I want to be...
Put your money in retirement homes.
Retirement homes, yeah.
You've touched on a lot of things there.
A lot of things.
I'll try and address some of them.
We're chatting, so we can...
Yeah. You can invest in a fund that follows the NZX50 here. But as you drill down into who are the constituents, you probably find that there's half a dozen property companies, half a dozen energy companies, and a whole bunch of other companies you don't really identify with and that aren't particularly sexy. You know, we don't have your Apples in New Zealand, so it's hard to get too excited. Financial education, absolutely. New Zealand should be doing a lot better at that. I think probably in the 50s and 60s they might have even taught you how to balance your checkbook, but there's nothing that I've seen from my two kids' experience, unless you're actually doing business as a course or economics as a course, then you get a little bit of exposure. One thing that has been a positive impact in the last couple of years has been the advent of things like Sharesies, where they're definitely targeting the younger generation to get them more interested in investing in the financial markets. And not that shares are the only way that you can invest, but that's one thing that's quite easy. Although I have seen kids start off with great excitement about Sharesies and have a couple of quick wins, but as soon as you have a couple of quick losses too, the motivation starts to fall away, and they probably not investing in necessarily intelligently, which is kind of your point about how do I know that the conglomerate that I'm putting my money in doesn't actually make nuclear or a component that goes into a nuclear weapon or whatever. So,
and I suspect they don't understand that the market's often cyclical. So, the thing with shares is it's a longer term game that you're playing anyway, right?
Absolutely. And coming out of COVID, a lot of kids, I think, probably with the support of their parents, did a little bit of research, jumped into Sharesies, and then the stock market came out of COVID lockdowns quite spectacularly, and they were all going, "Oh, this is great, let's put another $50 and another $50. It's almost like gambling." And then, of course, as you say, Pamela, it's cyclical, and people are sitting on a bunch of losses. Kids would have gone, "Oh, in New Zealand, that's going to go really well now that we're all travelling again," but it didn't, and it needed a rights issue. And so, like, I know my son lost a bit of money on Air New Zealand if he liquidated his Sharesies now. But yeah, that's all part of it. And as you say, education is the key to understanding what to look for when you want to put money away to have a great retirement.
I think it all depends as well on the fact that we're all still bought into the neoliberal culture and consumerism, which is great for your business. It's what people need to buy more because that feeds the machine. And actually, we should be looking at degrowth. We can't keep going up and up. So we've got to find out resources on the planet. So we can't keep making things from new resources because we're going to run out of resources. I was watching a program on Elon Musk. I don't think flying to Mars isn't really the answer. We've got to look after the planet we've got. But that means that's a whole different way of looking at finances.
I've got about 10 pages to go on his autobiography. Oh, it's a biography.
He's a fascinating chap.
So it is interesting, and Mars is clearly his reason for being. It's not cars, it's Mars. So that'll be interesting to see how he plays out.
We had a chat with a geologist here on the show, and I raised that question. I was like, how do you see people investing a lot of money to take us out of the earth, when we have people starving and all this stuff? And he gave me a pretty good answer. He said that there are a lot of things to consider, but sometimes you do something like that and then you actually help a lot of people. So by putting satellites, and understanding how the climates will play, you might save a lot of lives, like in the long term. Yep. So you're not investing and you're not helping the people around, but like you're thinking about the long term. I still think that there's a midway there. There's something in the middle that we could be looking at a slower investment. towards those things, like getting out of the earth, like everything we need is here. But I do understand that there's a lot of resources out there in space that would be amazing for us, but like at what cost, right?
Absolutely.
How is Elon Musk biography? Tell me.
Well, he's an interesting guy, and he's had some good luck and some good management. So I've found it really interesting. He's clearly a very interesting guy, and the whole Mars thing. I think he feels like the NASA's the moonshot and everything, and from the 60s, it just got dropped, and that there's no aspiration about it, and he feels that he needs to do it from himself for the sake of mankind to know whether we could or not. And so that is interesting in its own right. No one else is doing it, so he doesn't see that as a roadblock. Let's do it.
I think it's great, but I think there's a I can't think of a series of thought that about NASA only happened because it was governmental money. Private equity will never take you to the moon because you've got shareholders to consider. You've got all these other things. The cost of it will be prohibitive. Financially, it's not viable because, where's the return on it? All of those things. So really, it's got to be some kind of partnership with government and these tech billionaires. If that is really what we're aiming for, is to get off to Mars for some reason.
To me, I find it very defeatist. It's like giving up already. So I don't really go for the whole Mars thing. But as you say, we've got an amazing planet with heaps of resources. Let's look after it. Let's look after it.
Definitely.
Come on, people. Be nice to each other. Look after the environment. Come on. You were born in Fiji.
I was, and that goes back to the banking story. My dad was with the BNZ, and he got the opportunity to transfer up to their branch in Suva. My parents were recently married, and they said, well, let's try that. Go to the tropics for a couple of years. And my brother and I were both born there. My mum was a nurse. She's now retired, and she found that when she got to Fiji, her New Zealand qualification didn't count for anything, so she couldn't nurse. So she tried her hand at secretarial for a bit and lasted not very long, and thought, right, let's start a family because I'm totally bored. What
a great way to have.
Two boys born in the tropics, and then we came back to New Zealand.
Do you guys know how it is, like the countries, the islands, like the relationship with New Zealand? Because is the money the same as us? Like, can you take New Zealand dollars?
There's a Fiji dollar.
There's a Fiji dollar.
Yep.
Is it for most of the countries? Is it the same, like Tonga and Rarotonga?
No, Cook Islands is more of a protectorate of New Zealand than Fiji's a republic. So in the Cook Islands, you can take your New Zealand dollars. They have their own currency, but it's more like a souvenir for us visiting them, not for themselves. But but the Cook Island dollar and the New Zealand dollar are interchangeable. It doesn't matter. You can give, if you need to pay $10, you can 5 of this and 5 of that, and they don't care.
So probably for those places, it's not even worth it being independent because it's one of those tricky ones, right?
I think
they're independent, but there's a lot of aid that helps their economies, not just from New Zealand, but Australia,
China.
Same time.
I don't know if there's aid or bribery, one or the other. Yeah.
I was watching a Vice documentary of like how many kids in Africa are speaking Mandarin. Because China is doing
it's massive
great job.
Yeah,
solar energy and all this stuff.
Yeah, like all sorts of infrastructure going into even the Republic of South Africa, which in terms of the African economies is not the worst, but they're taking a lot of aid from China, I understand.
Was it something that you had to pay attention at the time, like how China and the other countries were playing out, like not necessarily the capitalist ones?
In banking, not so much. I have been to China on deals, and towards the end of my career, I helped Carter Holt Harvey buy a panels plant in southern China, and so that was interesting, particularly around ownership. You kind of never quite really understood whether freehold title meant freehold title or not. So yeah, there's definitely those challenges when you go offshore about just how the rule of law works. Does it translate directly to the way we understand title to an asset?
But it's a huge market. And if we're looking at the majority of our monies comes from export, right? So how can you ignore it? But how do you then ethically work with something like you mentioned Apple earlier as being a kind of a sexy stock, but they've got all kinds of issues with their workers' rights in China.
Like what?
Well, they've got little sweatshops going on. There's a lot of, I think a couple of years ago, there was quite a lot in the press about suicides that were happening in the Apple factories because people were working so hard, sending their money back to their families and living in dormitories and, you know, working ridiculous hours. So there's a lot of things around there.
It's just a tricky one because we talk about progress in a way that it seems like we ignore where most of the parts and the essential elements for our technology come from.
Oh, absolutely. We've seen that through COVID, where products weren't flowing into New Zealand, and it might be just one tiny transistor in a massive television or washing machine that is holding the whole thing up. Some of them might have been worth 2 cents, but if the factory that makes that 2-cent transistor was locked down, then the whole supply chain was shut down.
What do we do, Pamela?
Oh, I think we need to walk back a lot of the things that we've done. So we got rid of a lot of our manufacturing industry. It's a challenge now because we've got, you know, we send our logs abroad and then we buy them back when they're already treated. You know, so there's all kinds of things that we need to look at. Can you walk that back? Can you put that genie back in the bottle now you've done all of that? So I think it's looking at different ways of doing things and not necessarily the same thing. Because again, if we're looking at resources and resources are precious, we should be looking more remining of things, more recycling of things. There's a whole, as yet to be discovered, green industry, I think, out there in the minute. We're on the cusp of having to do something about that. I think we're almost there.
And those words, they sell as well, right? When you say that something is sustainable, that something is New Zealand made, when you use that, usually the population likes those things, right?
Absolutely. But Consumer NZ was in the press this week with, I think it was like 90 examples in a supermarket of products that are claiming to be sustainable, and it was just a total greenwashing. There's nothing to back those claims up. So yeah, there's work to be done all over the place. I think New Zealand's always going to struggle on some of these bigger issues. It's just because we're so small, and there's so many industries that we'll never have the economy of scale to recreate. Take shoes. We're going to have a massive shoe industry here because the population can't justify it, and New Zealand probably won't ever be an exporter of shoes unless we come up with a woolen base sports shoe, and let's call it all birds, but that's not going very well either. So so our population is always going to be a challenge. But back to the China thing, the geopolitical over the next little while with Taiwan is going to be quite messy, I think. This is in the paper every day at the moment with the war games that are occurring from both sides. The Americans and the Philippines were practicing the other day as well. So hopefully we don't have another Ukraine on our hands.
And there was something going on about Russia, China, and I think some other countries trying to not to use the dollar, the American dollar anymore. Did you get to see that?
I didn't pick that up, no.
Yeah. Did you see that, Taylor? Yeah, there was a talk that they would stop trading with New Zealand, with American dollars. And then I always think, like, are we coming to this time that, like, the American monopoly will decline?
Well, I think Donald Trump would argue that the American monopoly did decline, and that's why he had to haul it back. China got too powerful.
Although Donald, I think, would be happily cozying up with China and Russia now, were he in power.
There's a lot of games there, right?
Very definitely.
Yeah, it makes me think a lot of, like, the power situation, you know, like the concepts of the word. Like, do we need a country to be in charge? You know, like, do we need the most powerful country in the world? Like, is it a human thing that we cannot keep up with just being more equal and supporting each other? Like, who is the next potency? Like, do we need one? Like, can't we just...
That's quite funny, America, when they broke away from the British because they didn't want to be treated like a child anymore. They wanted to be independent. And now they're just trying to recreate their own empire.
American empire. What do you think, Mark?
I'm too young to know how America got its ascendancy in the 50s and 60s. Obviously, it created a lot of wealth, and coming out of a world war. Goodness me, I'm talking about stuff I don't know anything about, but I'm just speculating a little bit. Coming out of a world war as a winner, and then going through the 50s and 60s where consumerism and just a massive successful industrial machine was creating a lot of wealth. They're also pretty self-sufficient in oil, which helps out from time to time too, their economy. They became very rich before they became very powerful, I think. And I guess for a lot of people, money and power go together. And then it's being unwound slowly through their own undoing in many respects.
We were talking right at the start of the show about young people and how they see work, and how do you see the changes throughout the generations of like how we're dealing with the workloads and the time and the hours that we work, and how keen is the young generation to go and put the hours and focus on things when you can have a YouTube channel or whatever that makes some dollars, like what?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience in that. Like I'm lucky, I've got a blend of staff ages from 20-ish to 82. And even the younger staff that I have on deck, they've got good work ethics. We have out-counseled a few that did come with the wrong attitude, that even though they weren't on a casual contract, that they could come in casually. I don't have a lot of experience there, but sort of anecdotally and reading about it, yes, the different generations do come with different expectations. And I think some of it's really healthy too. It's like, what can my employer do for me as well as giving me a paycheck, whether it be work-life balance or further training or whatever it is that they're seeking, at work flexibility. I've got two young mums on deck at the moment who work hours that fits their needs for school and preschool, and that's just great. It helps us out too, because when we go through quieter times, which we're probably going to go through this winter, it means that we don't have full-timers on deck with not enough to do.
Before I ask Pamela something, I just want to say that if you are watching us right now, you can go on the live chat, and the first person to type full-time pizza eater, I just came up with that, full-time pizza eater gets a free pizza from Base Pizzeria. How cool is that? Full-time pizza eater.
Because no one wants to be a casual pizza eater.
I know, right? It's got to be committed.
Actually, I think that's probably the better thing to be a casual one. Can you imagine it? Pizza, breakfast pizza,
Ooh,
lunch pizza, dessert pizza.
Ooh,
Been
there. Pamela, what do you think about how the new generation, how the young people see work compared to all the people you were talking about, the generations before? I
think, to Mark's point, some of it's very healthy, that they're very concerned about their mental health. They're very concerned about the environment. They're looking for jobs with purpose if they can get them. But they often go a little bit too far. I think for some employers, certainly it's quite a challenge to run a business where you've got deadlines and you've got things that you need to do at specific times, depending on what industry you're in. And somebody thinks, I'm not going to come in today. I'd much rather do something else.
In a factory of 1,000, if somebody decides to pull a sickie, it probably doesn't matter at the end of the day. But if you're in a small business and you've got 3 people on a shop floor and one of them doesn't rock up to work on their rostered day, then it puts an enormous amount of strain on the other 2.
Yeah.
And like in my situation, it means that if a customer comes to a back door to receive a product, and one person has to go and help them load up, that means there's only one person on the floor. And there's a few kookies out there at the moment, and staff, particularly young female staff, they feel really vulnerable if they're the only person on the floor and there's a bunch of weird customers. Not everyone's weird, but it can be quite intimidating and very stressful.
So that's true, and the majority of businesses in New Zealand are small to medium, so they do have those issues if somebody doesn't come in. Or if somebody's not pulling their weight, they come in and they think, just coast today, I'll do what I want. even though I've been given priorities. It's a difficult for both sides. Again, this is why we wanted to put some education around it and just help people understand what their responsibilities are, because it's a contract. So the business pays you to come in and do work, and they expect you to do the work, which I don't think is unreasonable, unless it's something that they shouldn't be doing. That's a whole different issue. But if they're asking you to do what you've been contracted to do, then really you need to do it and understand that it's not forever. It's, you've got a first job if you're a young person. I don't think people now stay from, kind of leave school at 16 and go into a job and they stay there until they're 65. I don't think that happens anymore. So it's that change. And there's a lot of understanding from different generations. Oh, that's not how they used to do it in my day. I do hear that. And, well, this is not your day. It's a different day. And we've got to make sure that everything's moved to meet the needs of both the business and the employee.
Do you think we're moving towards an era that we will praise more productivity instead of the time that we spend at work, with the 4 day a week and all those trials that are happening around the world?
Oh, they're supposed to be great. The other thing that I'm seeing a lot of is this unlimited leave. So there's not. It used to be 20 hours.
Mark just freaked out now. He's like,
no, that's my That's a good idea.
But what's happening is some people will take the mickey. Some people are actually taking a lot of leave, which puts stress on the other people. But actually, it's working in the favour of businesses more, because they now don't have to pay out leave balances because you've got unlimited leave. There's no. Whereas at the moment, if you've got 20 days holiday, you don't take it every year and you end up with a leave balance of 25 when you actually leave the company. They have to pay out that 25 days to you. If you've got an unlimited leave policy, none of that happens, so you don't have to pay that out. And actually, people are typically, on average, taking about 15 days, because peer pressure means that people stay in work. Fascinating how that's worked.
What about the sick leave? Because in New Zealand, if you don't take them, you lose them, right? Is that right?
So
some employers roll them over.
Yeah, but usually up to a maximum. So I think the maximum is 20. Yep. So you can roll over. So if you get 10 a year, you can roll over that 10 if you don't take it, and then you're up to a maximum of 20.
Right. Is it something that you pay attention to, Mark, or you have people who are part of the team that look after all the work conditions and rights, or you like to be on top of?
I pay attention to it, and we've had staff who have challenges, particularly around sick leave, and it's not always the employee that's sick, but if the employee is a mother and has responsibilities for children and has to stay home and look after them when they're off school, then you can burn through your 20 days pretty damn fast, and that puts horrible strain on the employee as to next time they're sick, they know they're either going to go unpaid or they're going to have to take a day's leave. So we pay close attention to it.
Yeah, because unfortunately in retail you can't work from home.
No.
That's right. Yeah. Mark, when I asked you for a bio for the show description, you put something there quite personal, that you have a condition. You have a blood cancer. Is that
correct? Yeah.
What's the name, please?
It's lymphoma, which is one of the main branches of blood cancer, and I've got a version of it called non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a sub-branch which there's no particular cure for it. So I'm still under the management of specialists, and even though I'm in remission and healthy, my specialist will never say I'm cured, because it can be lurking somewhere in your body and just come back. So that was a challenge. It also coincided with my midlife crisis and leaving banking and things like that. So I got diagnosed just before my first child, my son, was born, back in 2003. And the cancer was picked up because I had very severe abdominal pains, which my doctor ran through all the regular checks, and they kept coming back negative, and I just kept saying, there's something, I know my body, there's something seriously wrong, just keep looking. And it was an ultrasound that picked up just a little shadow in my abdomen where these cancerous cells were starting to congregate. And it was deemed to be slow growing and not aggressive at that point. So I had some pretty low dose chemo and knocked it out of the park for about 7 years, and then you can probably see a scar that won't be on the camera, but I got this 7 years later. This golf ball just arrived on my neck overnight pretty much, and it had come back really aggressively. So I had more chemo and a full bone marrow transplant in 2010, which was a really interesting experience, and it took a long time to get over it. But yeah, so I'm in remission. That's helped kill all the baddies. But yeah, the doctor will never say that it won't come back again. But the good news is the more years I notch up after the bone marrow transplant, the less the chance that it comes back aggressively again. So all good.
Was it a stressful time in your life before you found out? Like, what were you going through? A lot of stress in the banking world? Like, do you think there was something related?
I thought about that a lot at the time. Was I exposed to chemicals? Did I use Roundup and Jandals one day? All these sort of things go through your mind. I was in a stressful job, yes. What did that impact? I'll never know. But yeah, it came out of the blue.
Because we hear that quite often, how the body will respond to states of mind, like how what we're doing, what's happening to us. So every time that I think about people working with finances, the image that comes to me is like the classic New York, people screaming, people like in the, what's the name?
Wall Street.
Wall Street's a good movie, yeah.
And I'm like, wow, I can see that being quite, of course it's not exactly like that, but it can be quite stressful, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know if stress was a contributing factor or not.
Do you feel okay now?
Absolutely, yeah.
And was there anything in your diet, in your way that you live your life that changed after that? Like, did you pay attention to things that you got some recommendation from the doctor just for yourself? Or
we do try and eat as healthy as we can, and I do moderate things like alcohol and coffee, and that is partly just through wanting to do the right thing, and partly also a little bit in the back of the mind about the cancer. I don't live my cancer, and I'm not criticising people who do, but for me it was something that I had to deal with. I put it in a little box, and rather than carry it on my shoulder, I threw it over my shoulder. We adjusted the way we live, but not too much, because you still got to live as well.
Was that one of the reasons you moved to Coromandel?
It was, although the Coromandel wasn't necessarily our destination. We just knew that we wanted to leave the city, and we wanted to give our kids, of which we had one at the time, or one on the way. I can't quite remember no, we had one, sorry. And we wanted to give him and any potential siblings a little bit more of a simpler upbringing than he was going to get in the city. And we initially looked a bit closer to Auckland, your Clevedons, your rural Papakuras and that sort of thing. But we had already had a beach house at Hahe, so we knew the Coromandel, and we were driving past one day and we saw this big sign for land available in the beautiful Puketui Valley, which is where we now live, opposite Prescott's Garage, and ended up buying there, yeah. And that was 16 years ago.
Does the housing crisis affect your business, the appliance stores, when there's something on the news? Like, does it change?
I think housing crisis impacts everybody who owns a home, even your middle to high income earners who want for nothing and they're financially comfortable, but when they think, or they hear, or they're told that their $3 million home yesterday is now worth 2.5 million, it does at some level affect their psyche in terms of spending habits, and that's only natural. So yes, I think it affects anybody who owns a home. If they feel a little bit poorer on paper one day to the next, then it will affect the psychology of their spending.
I feel poor every day.
And how do you spend?
Where's the? Sorry, bro. Oh, it was the other one. Ah,
got a violin.
Jesus, no. That one.
So you've got the BedsRus franchise as well.
Correct.
So I was reading the other day about the demise of the waterbed and how nobody buys them anymore. Have you got them for sale in your store?
No, we don't.
Do you know what happened to the waterbed?
I had a waterbed when I was a teenager, because I'm quite tall. I'm 6'4", if I stand up straight, which I don't do enough of. But yeah, so I outgrew a single bed when I was in my teens, and waterbeds in those days, a single waterbed, my parents got me one because they were 6'6". So yeah, I've experienced it. No, I can't remember the last time I saw one in a shop.
I wondered if it was environmental concerns.
Did you have one?
For water?
No, but my friend did. And that used to be her party trick. You'd go to her house and she said, come in here. And then she'd throw you on the bed. And they would all vibrate. And then it would stop really suddenly.
Oh. What's the thing with that technology that it keeps it cool during summer and warm during winter? How is that possible?
Which one's that?
With mattresses, right? Some mattresses, they...
We do have some of our high-end mattresses which have technologies in them that help dissipate heat and draw it away from your body and out through the vents in the side of the mattress. They don't do the reverse in the winter. They don't suck it back up on you, I'm sorry. But there is an electric blanket for that.
But if you had, that would be a cool technology. You got a partner, who's cold all the time and one who's hot all the time. You could wick it over to them, right?
Yep.
There you go.
I think we're just
get your
great
children
ideas factory going on here. Yeah,
children and grandchildren to invent that perfect wicking technology.
Were there things that you were surprised to see it coming to your shop? You were like, whoa, look at this. Do we actually have these things? Wow, this is amazing. Technologies or things that you were like, oh, cool. This is
I think
cool.
It's probably going to get what's the right word? It's going to speed up the wow moments, particularly around the connectivity of products that are coming. Most of our manufacturers, in terms of large appliances and TVs for that matter, are building smart technology into them, not necessarily because they've got smart apps to go right now, but because they know that in the future that there will be. So you're already seeing manufacturers who the simple ones are things like your phone going to tell you that your washing machine has finished a cycle. That's the easy stuff. But then your washing machine telling the factory that the bearings are running out and to pre-order some and send them to the nearest authorized service agent. That's coming, that sort of thing. LG have just launched a fridge which has LED panels on all four doors, and you can change the color of those LEDs from your phone. I feel purplish now, and you just go poof, and it just goes whoo, and turns purple.
Because that's what the world needs.
Because that's what the world needs.
the world needs.
By the way, the energy consumption on that fridge is hopeless, so you probably won't rush out and buy one.
Oh no! I thought we were going the other way.
What I really need is when it tells the washing machine, tells somebody else to come and take the washing out of the machine and put it on the line.
That would be
That's
good.
what I need.
Well, you could get a washer dryer. It just goes from one cycle to the next.
They're really bad.
Do you have is AI already impacting some of the products you have? Like, is it something that is already part of?
Not so much on the appliance side, no. It's not really. It probably is in terms of the way that they are designed and manufactured, but we don't see that in terms of the way that they function and they interface with consumers. I'm not seeing that yet.
You said something about ChatGPT that I didn't know before, Pamela. What was that? That they might be able to store the things that you...
Oh yeah, there's some privacy concerns because it can store what you... So because it can go anywhere on the internet, and that's where it learns from. If you've put something out there, it can find it. Got to ask the right question, but it can find it. So, because we were talking earlier with Mark about, how I was stalking him online, so I could find some questions for him. So ChatGPT, I think, is, it's one of those things at the moment. Is that can it be used for? It will be used for either good or evil. Probably a mixture of both.
Welcome to the Matrix.
A mix of both.
I mean, I love it. I've been using it for stuff. I tell it things.
Do you have more questions there that you wanted to ask Mark? Because you told me you had some.
I do. I've got a lot.
Do you use ChatGPT?
No. Wouldn't know where to look.
It's good, man.
It's fabulous.
Yeah. It might save you some work. It might save you some time. You know what it is?
I don't write a lot.
Do you know what it is?
Yeah, I do. But I don't write a lot, so...
What I did want to know is, I saw in your bio that your sport was tennis. So I wondered how you'd ended up as the director of the YBOP football.
Football?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Tennis was my game when I was a teenager, right through school, and I still enjoy it. I don't play it anywhere near enough. No, the Waikato football, YBOP football, I've always had an interest in governance of organisations, and have served on boards right from preschools and my school board, my kids' school board. And so early on in my small business ownership life, I did the directors course and joined the Institute of Directors. And I was looking for roles to help get more experience. And I saw that Waikato Bay of Plenty Football was advertising for directors outside of the traditional sort of club structures. And so I put my name forward and was selected for that. My son was playing a lot of football. I had an interest in it, and I wanted also to bring sort of a more regional perspective to it, because Coromandel was kind of far flung from the main hubs of Waibop, which was Hamilton and Tauranga. And that was, I really, really enjoyed that. It didn't stay there for too long a time. I was finding the commute to the meetings in Hamilton late at night was quite challenging. And in the early days of owning 100% Thames and Whitianga was really tough times for the industry as well. So I was finding it stressful at work, and then having to drive to Hamilton, come home at midnight from these meetings. It was just all a bit too much. So, but no, I really enjoyed it, and some great people.
I thought I was going to get a football story there about how you'd once rubbed up against, like, what's his name, Ronaldo, and I was inspired.
No, I haven't rubbed up against any of those guys, sorry.
So we have our winner of the night, Tootie Williams. Is that right, Taylor? Tootie Williams got the pizza. Can we have some claps for her? Wow. Just go to Bates Pizzeria. They got the list with the names. Just take your ID and you'll be sorted. This is cool, Mark. Thanks so much for joining us, man.
No problem. I'm having a good time.
Yeah. Pamela?
I have one final question.
Yes, please.
I saw that you were interested in musical theatre.
Oh, that's right.
If you could be in any musical,
Great question.
which one would it be, and what part would you play?
Oh, too hard. There are so many great ones, and I've been a few. This is going way back to primary school, but I was Joseph in Joseph and his Technicolor Code. I was the captain of the Pinafore.
Yeah.
That was pretty exciting. I was in ABBA just recently.
Nice.
Down at Thames. We had a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I can't be part of that group at the moment with no Kopuhiko Road, because it would take too long to get to rehearsals.
So which member of the band were you?
Oh, I was in the background. I was an understudy to one of the blokes. Goodness me, Matilda. I'd probably be Mrs. Trunchbull in Matilda.
Oh, cool.
I think we took our we were lucky enough to go to the UK when it was about 6-7 years ago, and we went to Matilda with the kids, and it just blew my mind. That musical is so much fun, and if you haven't seen it, you should see it when it's coming to New Zealand. And yeah, Mrs. Trunchbull's an awesome character, best played by a man, I think.
Live music as well? Do you go to concerts every now and then?
Yeah, I'm going to the Exponents in Coroglan at Anzac. It's going to be a lot of fun. Probably not as much. Oh, we've actually had a flurry of concerts recently. So being a child of the 70s and 80s, some of my music's probably a bit old for some of the younger people, but we enjoyed seeing like Billy Joel. We're supposed to go and see Elton John, but got cancelled. Yeah, now kids are trying to keep us young too with some of their music as well. My son's really big into drum and bass, so we're wincing our way through some of that.
You just need earplugs, man. You just need some mufflers, and then it's
That's
fine.
good to be open to new things.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's great.
But we've indoctrinated them as well, so our kids love the Mamas and Papas and Credence as well, so that's cool.
We had Andrew Fagan on the show.
Yeah. Mockers actually came to my high school when I was 13, and they did a free concert, and they were throwing away their little singles, and I was like, oh, wow, rock stars. And he was in like a rust-coloured velvet jacket, and his hair was looked like he'd just thrown up, and we all thought he was pretty cool. And he was.
And he
was living on a boat.
Yeah. Still on a crazy mission in life, yeah.
Nice.
Were you a Mockers fan?
I don't know who they are. I would have been in the UK then, so.
This is
But I do know who the
82.
Slacks are.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So we had them at we organised a big event for a client, and the Slacks, one of my colleagues, she got in touch with the Slacks, and they came along, and we had the big Araha party, and they They were just amazing. A real
Cool.
good Kiwi band. What an amazing vibe for an evening.
Shout out to this. Like we might bring, well, make an effort to bring it to the show
That
now.
would be great.
I'll bring it to co-host that one. Thank you so much, team.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been
Thank you for having
fun.
me.
Thank you. Thanks for teaching us some new things. That's cool.
Thank you. And I highly recommend, if you want to buy a fridge, go and see Mark, because my new fridge is awesome.
Thank you very much.
There you go. Do you have the one with the 4 LED?
No, but it's got one of those water things in. I didn't know that I needed one until we bought one.
And there you go.
It's great.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Papa, thank you so much. And we're back on Thursday with Mr. Ron Morgan, old school Magri Bay teacher. He supports a lot of the rugby initiatives in this town and the fishing. And we're going to have Mr. Ross Liggins as a co-host. It's going to be a good one. Some classic stories about the Magri Bay. So, yep, you want to be here with us. I'll see you on Thursday at 7. Peace. Bye.
Altbays.